It's my one life, and I give it everything I got. I am music. I am sports. I am the culture. Here's a quick news break with yours truly. I'm the one and only. I go by the name of Mr. TALIAFERRO. Please make sure you're following your boy on Instagram at itsmrtaliaferro. Remember, it's always at itsmrtaliaferro. Now, I have to be honest with you guys. These are two people that I actually respect in different ways. I actually respect Charlamagne's brand, how he's grown, his opinion, how he started out as the controversial figure, and how this dude has marketed himself and promoted himself, and not only in a household name in hip-hop. I think he's the best interviewer of all time, by the way. He's also worked his way into the political world as a respected voice. His voice has respect. And say what you want about Charlamagne, people think twice about doing an interview with this brother. Like, that's my thing. Like, let's say it's basketball, right, or football. If you have to think about me the night before when you playing against me on the court, or if you playing football, whatever, if you're the quarterback, whatever defensive tackles got you up at night, that's who you respect. And for Charlamagne, when people are going to the Breakfast Club, they're cognitively thinking like, yo, dang, I got to deal with Charlamagne. I hope he don't bring this up. There's power in that. There's respect in that. So say what you want. I think he's the best interviewer of all time. I respect his brand, but I also got a lot of respect for what Joe Budden has did. This is a total different respect. I don't think Joe's the most polarizing with his takes, but I love his music background. Love his music takes. Love his R&B takes, and I love his independent fight. I love his independent fight, and I think he's really great at creating content. That's the thing I think Joe's been really great at, from Everyday Struggle to the Pull Up to State of the Culture. Is good to me. Not as some of these other platforms he's got. I think it's good though. And the Joe Budden podcast, I can't miss it. I watch that bad boy every week. And by the way, happy birthday to Joe Budden. I love the Joe Budden podcast. I love it. It's the only podcast that I for sure know that I'm going to watch. And a conversation has started to brew in our culture, right? Who's got more pull? Let's take away all the politics. Let's take away, because obviously the Breakfast Club is more powerful. They're in households. It's a radio station versus a podcast. And I really don't like playing games like this, because there's got to be respect for what the Breakfast Club has did as a radio station. As much as many views as Joe's podcast does, and it does a lot of them. I'm one of them every week, 2 times a week. You cannot compare a radio station to a podcast normally. But in this situation, I think something's different going on. Let's talk about pull. Let's just talk about the culture. Remove the politics, remove the radio station, remove Spotify. Let's talk about who do you bring up more when you have in hip hop conversations with your friends in 2020. I cannot say that Joe Budden and his podcast has taken the lead, because we still have to incorporate the fact that Breakfast Club does 5 to 7 elite interviews every week. Let's say pre-COVID, right? You cannot remove that from the culture. You cannot remove that, right? But with COVID, the Breakfast Club's interviews don't have the pull that they used to. And that Joe Budden podcast, it's video, and I mean they're shooting per normal. So I do believe the conversation has started because of COVID and the fact that Breakfast Club interviews are Zoom-based, not as impactful. Who's just more impactful in your culture? Who do you bring up more, right? Joe Budden podcast or the Breakfast Club's platform? I think that's a real conversation. I'm somebody with a journalism background. I think you can now have that until the Breakfast Club is able to get back in studio. I think you can now have that real conversation. Now, it looks like Joe Budden and Charlamagne got this kind of competition with each other. I actually think it's a little bit of hatred between the two of them. I noticed it from both sides. Like, Charlamagne, for some reason, when Joe Budden's name gets brought up, to me, he goes a little too hard. Like, he always asks those questions or brings up stuff he doesn't, like, I don't see him questioning Amanda Seales the way he does Joe Budden. And on Joe Budden's side, he always gets sensitive when Charlamagne brings him up, right? Like, I've watched listened to segments on Joe Budden's podcast in which they talked about Charlamagne for 25 minutes. But let Charlamagne bring him up for 3 minutes on a Breakfast Club segment. It's all hell. Joe's got to respond. He's got to do this. He got to do that. And there have been weeks when Joe's went in on Charlamagne, made jokes about him and Yee and him and Envy and all that, and we ain't hear a response from Charlamagne. Not on Brilliant Idiots, not on Breakfast Club. So all I'm saying is I think they both are hypocrites in a way when it comes to each other. They both act with each other differently than they do friends of theirs, other personalities, or whomever. But it's good to talk about. I'm not gonna lie. I'm loving as a viewer listening to this and watching these two go back and forth. So last week, after it was announced via Joe Budden that his podcast would not be returning to Spotify, I believe they got like 5 or 6 episodes left. They will not be exclusively on Spotify. Charlamagne on his platform, The Breakfast Club, said, you know what? Joe keep ruining deals. I'm starting to wonder if it's not Joe, if it's not Spotify, or if it's not Complex. Is there a possibility that Joe Budden is the reason why these deals keep following through? So I knew that would be a response from Joe on his podcast. And boy, did he respond. I mean, the name of the podcast for the latest one is We Are Not the Same. The thumbnail is a picture of him and Charlamagne. And for like 20, 30 minutes, Joe Budden goes on one of his rants about Charlamagne. I don't have to play it because it's so long, but I'll read to you guys a couple of quotes in which Joe Budden responds to Charlamagne claiming or trying to allude to him being the problem in his deals. Joe says, Charlamagne, I know that you have this healthy obsession with me. I know that you think we are in a competition. You might also think that we are fighting the same fight. You would be mistaken with all three of those. All right, Charlamagne, you're not going to get it because I own this. My most valuable, my most powerful, my most accomplished asset, I own it. Ownership. You see all these black people running around preaching ownership. There's a reason for it. He went on to say, I see people saying there goes Joe burning another bridge again. There's oppression on the bridge. I cannot have someone with a voice as powerful as you just be misinformed on shit. 10 years. He y'all number one. How are you paid? I'm listening to your ads. We're not having the same fights behind the scenes. It looks the same, but it's not the same. And, Joe's completely right. We are in the era of black ownership. Black people are making waves right now. We're trying to buy back the block, literally, right? Shout out to Rick Ross. We're trying to buy our blocks. And I don't mean that just in the hood. I mean literally like, yo, okay, I got a powerful platform. I don't want to just sit around and work for somebody else. If I have the capital to put up my own and have my own platform, fund it myself, fine. Joe is fighting that fight. And it looks like he's going to continue to fight that fight somewhere else. He doesn't want, Spotify wanted to own the Joe Budden podcast. He wanted to own their rights. And Joe wasn't going for it. I respect that, by the way. I think that's very commendable. But I wouldn't be the guy to, now my only thing is I wouldn't be the guy to go on my platform and diss the people that I worked for the last year or two. That's whack to me. It's just whack. Charlamagne has been on Power 105 for close to a decade now. And, all due respect, Charlamagne can still be fired from that platform. He could be fired if he says the wrong things. I'm sure there's some leeway in his contract for certain things, but there are also certain things that he cannot say. And, he's got a book called Black Privilege. I do think the conversation can be had. You're like, yo, Charlamagne, how many outlets have you leveraged? He had the Uncommon Sense show. I know he's got a new show coming in the next couple of weeks, I believe, for the political season. But not a lot of success for Charlamagne from the entertainment perspective outside of the Breakfast Club. His Brilliant Idiots podcast is doing pretty good. Not Joe's podcast. But hey, I'm just saying, I think that's a fair conversation. But I also see Charlamagne's point in saying this. I'm fine with people going and using other people's money while they're funding their own. But I think Joe's asking the question, when you gonna fund your own? Y'all let me know in the comment box below. What do y'all think about this very intricate conversation? And again, as a content creator, I have a decent sized platform. I'm watching what's going on for my own sake and selfishly because it's entertaining as hell. Y'all let me know in the comment box below. What do y'all think about Joe Budden and Charlamagne's back and forth as it spices up a little bit with Joe Budden telling Charlamagne straight up and down, we are not the same. I'm out.